Vladimir-Suzdal Rus is an area of luxurious natural and architectural beauty. Here, in the very heart of Russia, you can really get to know the Russia of princes, tsars, folk tales, and feel the heartbeat of its ancient history. Early in the 12th century, Prince Vladimir Monomakh established on a small plateau on the site of an ancient settlement a city called Vladimir, named after himself. The city was further developed later in the 12th century by the great Prince Andrei Bogolyubsky, eventually becoming the medieval capital of northeastern Rus. The symbol of the city of Vladimir is the Golden Gates. These gates were built during the second half of the 12th century and were both the main entrance to the city and a formidable defensive feature. The gates are a white stone structure with a 14-meter arch cut through them. The arch was protected by massive timber doors decorated with sheets of gilded copper from the inside. Gates like these were built in all large cities to commemorate the entrance of Jesus Christ into Jerusalem via the city's Golden Gates. The ancient Vladimir was enclosed by a huge defensive rampart and had 5 such gates. Only the Golden Gates, which were the main gates of the ancient Russian capital, have survived. In 1958, a white stone monument was erected in the Cathedral Square to mark the city's 850th anniversary. It incorporates 3 figures: a warrior with a sword, a stonecutter with a carved capital, and a worker with a model of a tractor. The pyramid is also decorated with bas-reliefs showing various stages in the city's history. Nearby is Lipki Park. This park was established in 1901 by order of the governor to improve the main square of the city. The park is now a favorite leisure place of the city's population, and many generations of Vladimir people have spent time relaxing under the shadows of the lime trees. From the square, one can easily see the main Christian monument in the city, the Assumption Cathedral. In the 12th to 14th centuries, the cathedral was the principal church in Russia, and it was here that Russian princes were crowned. The Assumption Cathedral was not only a place of worship, but was also a center of education, and was the place where historical chronicles were recorded and kept for centuries. The cathedral's interior is still decorated with fragments of the 12th century paintings, as well as 15th century frescoes painted by the Russian genius Andrei Rublev, such as The Last Judgment, The Youths. The Assumption Cathedral was also used as a burial place for Russian princes, with Princes Andrei Bogolyubsky and Vsevolod Bolshoy Gnezdo being buried here, along with Alexander Nevsky's father Yaroslav. There is a luxurious altar screen built using donations from Catherine II. In the 15th century, a replica of the Vladimir Assumption Cathedral was built in the Moscow Kremlin. A 4-tier, 56-meter belfry with a high spire was built in 1810, in place of the 17th century hip-roofed belfry, which had been destroyed by lightning. Outside the church is the main square of Vladimir, Cathedral Square. As well as a monument to Andrei Rublev, the square contains a beautiful red brick building decorated with traditional elements of Russian architecture. This is the former City Duma Council building, built in 1907 and designed by a local architect, Revyakin. In the very center of Vladimir, there is a unique monument to ancient Russian architecture, the Dmitrievsky Cathedral. The cathedral took 3 years to build and was completed in 1197, and decorated with carved stone, it appears to be snugly covered with a lacy white shawl. While not as large as the Assumption Cathedral, the Dmitrievsky Cathedral is very elegant, with walls decorated with sculptures, making the church appear to be made of lace. This was the first time that a Russian architect used so many sculptures, over 1,000, to decorate the church. Every carved stone has an individual theme, a biblical or historical one, or a depiction of flowers and plants. In the center of the group on each face is king, surrounded by plants, animals, birds, and griffins. Some of the 12th century frescoes survive in the cathedral, including fragments of the Last Judgment. The Birth of Our Lady Monastery was established in the late 12th century by Prince Bolshoy Gnezdo and remained Russia's main monastery for many years. This white stone monastery was the place of the great Prince Alexander Nevsky's burial in 1263. In 1723, his remains were transferred to Alexandrovskaya Lavra in St. Petersburg by decree of Peter the Great. A monument to Alexander Nevsky. street with an ancient name of Koslov Wall stretches along the rampart from the Golden Gates. A water tower was built here, and from the observation point at the top of the tower, one can enjoy a beautiful view of Vladimir and its suburbs. The Saviour Church, adjacent to the water tower, was built on the foundations of a 12th century church, which housed the court of Andrei Bogolyubsky. The Nikolska Church was built next to the Saviour Church, which, together with the belfry, form an integrated ensemble. The main building of the princesses following the Tatar-Mongol invasion. By Princess Maria, the wife of Prince Vsevolod III. Suffering from a serious disease, Maria promised to establish a convent, and when the Assumption Cathedral was built next to the convent, the princess herself entered the convent under the name of Marfa. In time, the convent came to be known as Princesses in commemoration. The convent was used as a burial place for the great princes of Vladimir, and was attacked and ruined on a number of occasions. However, it was always restored. Construction of the Church of St. Nicholas at the Galleys was funded by a wealthy local merchant and was named after St. Nicholas, the holy martyr and patron saint of seamen. In the middle of the theatre square, a red brick Trinity Church built in a pseudo-Russian style stands out. Built by the architect Zarov in 1916, to commemorate the 300th anniversary of the House of the Romanovs and funded by the Old Believer merchants, this is the last of its type in pre-revolutionary Vladimir and is known by locals as the Red Church. There is another red brick church, the Mikhail Archangel's Church, which dates from the end of the 19th century. In Byzantine style, this church was built at the request of Captain Fyodor Arkhangelsky, who left the money in his will, and is devoted to Archangel Mikhail, the patron saint of the Russian army. After the revolution, the church was closed. However, it was restored during the 1990s and now again holds regular services. Ten kilometers to the east of Vladimir, there is the Bogolyubovsky Monastery. According to the legend, it was here that our mother appeared to Prince Andrei Yurovich. The next day, the prince established a city on this spot, which he named Bogolyubov, meaning the place loved by God, and the prince became known as Bogolyubovsky. In 1165, on the high bank of the river Klyazma, where the Nerl River joins it, a white stone palace was built. Even the palace square was paved with white stone, and these paving slabs now lie 1.5 meters below visitors' feet. Bogolyubov became the prince's residence, the castle, and was one of the first Russian cities with stone walls. Only two unique 12th century monuments survive here, the carved tower with a staircase and a belfry and adjacent gallery. Prince Andrei Bogolyubsky was killed in the tower in 1174 by conspirators, and after his tragic death, the palace was ransacked and no more princes resided there. The site is now the Bogolyubovskaya convent. The main parts of the convent that still exist today, a wall with towers, the Assumption Church above the gates, nun cells, and the five-dome cathedral of Our Lady's Nativity, were built in the 18th and 19th centuries. On the hill where the river Nerl joins the river Klasma, in the middle of the meadows, stands the beautiful white stone Pokrov Church, one of the most poetic creations of Russian architects. Outstanding beauty, amazing reliefs, and harmonic proportions are combined in this single church, which has been standing there for more than 8 centuries. This was the first church in Russia to be built in honor of Our Lady's protection, Prince Andrei Bogolyubsky's patron saint. When built, the church looked totally different, being surrounded by a gallery, and the hill on which it stood was paved with white stone. A magnificent stepped church was an extension to the Bogolyubovsky castle, and a quay on the busy river contributed to the prince's power. Sadly, the castle did not survive. However, the church of Pokrova on the Nerl continues to be enjoyed by many tourists visiting this wonderful area. The church is now part of the Vladimir-Suzdal Museum Reserve, a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The Bogolyubovsky Meadow in itself is a natural monument with a variety of vegetation not found elsewhere. Here you can find over 250 species of rare plants. Four kilometers from Suzdal, on the plateau where the river Kamenka joins the river Nerl, there is the oldest surviving ancient white stone church in the Vladimir and Suzdal region, the Church of St. Boris and St. Gleb in the village of Kedeksha. According to legend, this is where the two saint brothers, Prince Boris Rostovsky and Prince Gleb Muromsky, met when they travelled to Kiev at the request of their father, Vladimir the Red Sun. Kedeksha was Yuri Dolgoruki's residence. He built a fortified palace on the riverbank, of which only parts of the ramparts remain. The simple church, built in honor of the sons Boris and young Gleb in 1152, survives, and even without any decorations, impresses us now with its power, reminding us of the prince's battles. In 1780, the Stefanyevska church and a hip-roofed belfry were built. Despite being built at different times, the three buildings form an amazingly harmonious ensemble. Entering Suzdal, a visitor is met by the obelisks of the Vladimir-skaya Zastava, where the main street of Suzdal starts, ending by the Yaroslavskaya Zastava after crossing the whole town. In respect of the number of monuments and maintaining its original image, Suzdal is without equal. There are over 200 monuments of cultural and architectural importance dating back to the 12th to 14th centuries, located in an area of just 9 square kilometers. Remaining within its 18th century boundaries, Suzdal has managed to preserve its original layout, a unique spirit of an ancient Russian town, and a wonderful harmony between ancient Russian architecture and the environment. The white stone walls and blue domes of the Suzdal Kremlin rise by the river Kamenka. The Kremlin complex was the original center from which Suzdal grew during the Middle Ages. The heart of the complex is the Cathedral of the Nativity, built in the 12th century. Fragments of some wall frescoes from various ages, as well as a late 17th century 5-tier iconostasis, can still be found in the cathedral. A 17th century lantern is one of the surviving relics. The Kremlin complex also includes the Cross Chamber, a hall for official functions, the 15th century Archbishop's Chambers, the first residence of the Suzdal Archbishop, and the refectory. Within the boundaries of the Kremlin can be found the wooden Nikolskaya church, which was brought to Suzdal from the small village of Glotovo as the first exhibit in the Museum of Wooden Architecture. The church looks like a small village house and is a typical example of a wooden church and place of worship of that particular era. Opposite the Kremlin, on the other side of the river Kamenka, is the Museum of Wooden Architecture and Peasant Life. This site was originally a monastery, but it did not survive. However, interesting wooden buildings from the 18th and 19th centuries were moved here from different locations, and now there is a preserved village with 2 churches, peasant huts, windmills, and old wells. On the hill there is a 2-storied house dating from the 18th century, which was once the property of the merchant Likonin. Unlike most other medieval homesteads of a similar age, this 300-year-old building was built in a purposeful way, with solid gates, a high boundary fence, a paved yard, outbuildings, and has 3 windows facing the street. Not far from the market square, towards the north, is Rizopolozhensky Monastery. It is famous not only as a monument, but also because of the spiritual deeds of one of the nuns, Efrosinia, previously the Princess Feodulia. She was responsible for much of the improvements in the building, and thanks to her prayers, even Bati Khan did not invade the monastery. The main feature of the monastery are the massive 2-doored sacred gates, which used to be the main entrance. These were built in 1688 by local Suzdal craftsmen and are decorated with tiles. The monastery itself was built in the 13th century, but unfortunately none of the original buildings survive. The oldest building on the site is the three-domed Rizopolozhensky Cathedral, built in the 16th century. Also on the site of the monastery is the tallest building in Suzdal, the Prepodobenskaya Belfry, which is 72 meters tall and was built in 1819 to commemorate the victory of Russian forces in 1812. The belfry can be seen from all over Suzdal, as well as from many kilometers away. On the right of the Spaso-Efimovsky Monastery stands the Smolenskaya Church, built in the Baroque style, and the Simeonovskaya Church, with a newer belfry. Next to it is the Posadsky House, which, dating from the end of the 17th century, is the only remaining example of dwelling house stone architecture from pre-Peter I times. Unlike Western medieval towns, dwelling houses in Russian towns were almost always built of wood. Constructing houses from stone in Russia only became popular towards the end of the 17th and beginning of the 18th centuries. The impressive walls of the Spaso-Efimovsky Monastery stretch almost 1.5 kilometers. Along the walls there are 12 battle towers, with the tallest standing 22 meters high. Near the monastery, a statue of the Russian hero Pozharsky was erected, and he himself was buried in the monastery. In 1352, Prince Boris founded Spassky Monastery, which was later renamed Spaso-Efimovsky in honor of the first abbot of the monastery. On the cathedral square, there is Uspenskaya Church. Archimandrite's building and monastery belfry, where we can hear the gentle music of numerous bells. From the steep bank of the river Kamenka, there is a fantastic view of the convent of Pokrov, which was founded in 1364 by Prince Andrei Konstantinovich. The convent's appearance today dates from the 16th to 17th centuries. The convent had a bad reputation as a place of lifelong exile and imprisonment for noblewomen, who were the victims of dynasty conflicts, family woes, and the harsh customs of those times. After the infamous infertility affair, the wife of the great Prince Vasily III, Solomonia Sabinova, was sent there. The fourth wife of Ivan the Terrible was imprisoned there, as was the first wife of Peter the Great. Both were later buried there. Pokrov Cathedral is the main building of the monastery. This is a grand and at the same time lyrical cathedral, and is one of the most poetic monuments in Suzdal. The sacred gates were built in 1518. Blagoveshenskaya Church is graceful and elegant, and there is an intricate pattern on the facade which is reminiscent of folk carving. The cathedral is connected to the belfry. There are 11 log houses which are replicas of Russian huts of the 19th century, which form part of the Hotel Pakrovskaya. Nearer to the northern facade of the cathedral in 1551, they built a refectory, a church dining chamber. In the very center of the town, there are two picturesque churches. The five-domed Lazarevskaya Church was built in 1667, and Antipyevskaya Church, which is one of four churches in Suzdal with an inverted dome. The busiest street in Suzdal is Kremlevskaya, which runs from the gates of the Kremlin to the market square. At the end of the street by the market square is Pyatnitskaya Church. The street finishes with Gostinny Dvor, built by the architect Vershinsky in 1806 to 1817. The market comprises a long building of market stalls lying parallel to the main street, which is about 200 meters away. Between the main street and the market stalls stands a church built in the Baroque style, Voskresenskaya. The church itself has almost no decorations. However, the nearby belfry is decorated with rows of niches with glazed tiles. Within the grounds of the 13th century Vasilyevsky Monastery, there is a still functioning 17th century cathedral with a 19th century belfry and Sretenskaya Church. Legend says that the funds for building the monastery were donated by the mother of Peter I, Natalia Narishkina. In the distance can be seen the newly restored Mikhail Archangel Church, Frola and Lovra Church, and Alexander Nevsky Church. At the edge of the town on Korovenskaya Street stands Kryesta Vazdvizhenskaya Church in deplorable condition, and next to it is Kozmodomyenskaya Church, built in the 18th century. If you want an unforgettable experience, give yourself a real treat. Visit the Vladimir-Suzdal area. You will remember this picturesque corner of the Russian lands for many years to come.